effort that, through the park, through the Conservancy, and through the city, the effort that we're making to engage, with every community possible in that conversation, I think is extremely important. And so it means a lot to be here tonight and a part of this. Clearly with the first phase of the park being a focus on the plaza and play space, there's a question about, what play truly means to us. And so I'd love to hear from anybody in our audience, what play means to you. Obviously you've got folks out there who range in age and background, and play can mean a lot of different things. But I would love to hear, maybe as like a bit of a warm up before we get into Grayson Maughan's presentation on the update on the design and the scheme for the plaza and play space. If we could hear from our audience, what play means to you. And no need to be shy. So again, the question is what play means to you. I know I'll just sort of maybe kick it off by sharing. I was actually at Dix Park this past weekend and had an opportunity to catch up with some good friends to play spike ball, which is sort of this cross between, foursquare and volleyball, with the net low to the ground, and you've got a ball, you're kind of juggling in the air, you're trying to hit it through the net. While out there, we saw folks, with pop-up volleyball courts, and I saw a family, exercising together, a mom, dad, and a little girl, all out there running around, having a good time. But again, would love to hear from anybody on the call tonight what play means to you.
Nick, I like to share.
Yes, thank you, Trey.
Yeah, play means to me is keeping curiosity. I think you staying curious about different things is it harnesses a playful spirit. So when I go out into the park, you find different things. You hang out with people and get to know them, and then you also get to learn about the plants there and also the history, and just find ways to explore. I think the curious feeling, that if you keep that curiosity, you'll keep that playful spirit. So play, I correlate with being curious.
I love that. I love that, Trey. And I'm seeing here, we're getting some comments in the chat box as far as what play means to folks. I see from Susie from Facebook Live, getting to spend time with friends, roller skating. She likes that's a good form of play. From Daniel, playing games, a break from, adult conversations. Charlotte Rose said unstructured learning. I love that. I absolutely love that. Shauna Fulton says play means being able to gather in a safe environment where you can concentrate on nothing except having fun and being creative with fun. Love it. Absolutely love it. We've got one more, walking off the paths, exploring. Just again, to Trey's point, being curious and engaging with your natural environment. Absolutely love that. Well, I think that might be a great way to sort of transition here into hearing more from our senior planner for Dix Park and for the plaza and play space, Grayson Maughan. Grayson, if you'd like to kick it off and share with us what the update is on our plaza and play space.
Sure. Thanks, Nick. It sure is great to be here, and thanks to the Dix Park Conservancy for having me. So I'm going to share my screen. And all right, it looks like you can probably see my screen. I'm going to keep going, assuming that all is good. So I'm Grayson Maughan. I work for the Parks Department, Raleigh Parks Recreation and Cultural Resources. I'm the project manager for Plaza and Play. So I want to send a thanks also to the Dix Park Conservancy, because they are funding the design of this project through a grant to the city, and are a nonprofit partner and have been supporting us throughout the development of the park so far. So here you can see in blue, Plaza and Play area, as it sits in the context of the adopted master plan. It's about 18 acres. It's along Lake Wheeler Road. I also want to mention there's a lot happening in the neighboring area to the park with that we are so close to downtown. The Dick's Edge study is currently happening. It is going through the Raleigh Planning Department. It is looking at the area that's adjacent to the park that you see outlined in blue. And it is looking at things like land use, streetscape suggestions. They are in the early phase of this project. They've had several public meetings and have several more coming up. During the master plan development, City Council allocated the money to conduct this study, realizing that there is a lot of change happening in this neighborhood and a lot of speculation and growth happening as well. So that's a very important study that we're glad is happening concurrently. The site that is Plaza and Play is currently used as a temporary dog park. We know that it is well loved. Just about any day that I'm out at Plaza Play area, I see about this many people out there. Before Plaza and Play goes under construction, the dog park will be relocated within the park. We have heard what people love about it, that it's very big, it has grass. So we have heard those things, and we are working on finding a new spot for the dog park that will incorporate those aspects that are so loved about the current site. Here is an aerial of Plaza and Play. So this is the fenced in area that is currently used for the dog park. When the site was in operation as the mental health hospital, this was the patient recreation field. So you can see evidence of the old baseball diamond. There were some tennis courts. This project site includes the House of Many Porches, which will be rehabilitated as part of the project. You can see that the site comes right up to Lake Wheeler Road. We are approaching the end of our schematic design phase. So after that will be design development and construction documents. That will take us to about the summer of 2022. And we hope that we are able to transition into construction shortly after the end of this phase. And that is dependent upon us securing funding. I'm going to provide a very quick design update. As I mentioned, we have an adopted master plan. And so as we've moved into designing Plaza and Play, we are working from the three principles of the master plan. So build from what is there. We have a really beautiful site. There's also some historic buildings. We want to open up and connect. This middle image is of the Plaza Play. You can see that there is a fence right along Lake Wheeler Road. We want to bring the park edge up to Lake Wheeler Road and connect to these neighboring residences. We want people to know that this is a park and that they are welcome to come in and offer something for everyone. So this is our current design of schematic design. You can see along the bottom is Lake Wheeler Road. We have an entry drive connecting you to Lake Wheeler Road. There is a parking lot. The entry drive also connects you into the existing road network of the site at Biggs Drive. You can see that when you come in from the parking lot, you are greeted with a grand staircase. The topography here is a little bit higher, and that allows you to enter into this grand stair, or on either side of the staircase are accessible entry paths that wind down to meet you down in the plaza. Creation of this fountain plaza. By removing some of the existing roads in the site and the gravel parking lot that is there right now, we are able to create this new lawn called the Grove View Lawn. And that connects us to the grove that exists today, or this area that is known as Harvey Hill. So by creating this lawn, it is really exciting that we are able to connect to an existing beautiful open space and borrow from that existing space. I mentioned the House of Many Porches will be rehabilitated. There will be a garden area near it. In front of the Harvey building will be a swing terrace, so you can overlook Harvey Hill, and I will take you through some renderings that give you a really great idea of how these spaces will become. Down in the Fountain Plaza area, there is a waterfall wall and a comfort station with restrooms. And if you go up these paths, you have different play areas, so NC Playground, Nature Play, Water Play, Mountain. And so these take you up to a higher elevation that's above the comfort station and integrates water that meanders down into a sand bowl. We also have a promenade that takes you from the top of the project site at Biggs Drive and brings you down into the plaza area. On either side of that is the picnic grove, and that will have areas for grilling and picnics, lots of shade, and then a promenade too to connect you from Lake Wheeler Road into the project site. So this is the overlook terrace if you're coming in from the parking lot. And so you can see that this plaza area has a really great view over the newly created Grove View lawn, and you can see the city skyline in the back. The waterfall wall off to the left that is incorporating the comfort station, and that waterfall wall is coming off the roof of the comfort station. And recognizing we have such hot summers and having that water to provide some cooling. The grand staircase that you see, so this will provide a point of entry, places to sit and people watch. And then if we have an event in the plaza, this can also provide some seating to watch, say, a small performance in the plaza area. Accessibility is very important. So these blue lines are highlighting all the routes that are accessible. So you can access them if you have children in strollers or limited mobility. So you can see here that a lot of the site and the majority of the site in the paved areas are accessible. Here's another rendering of the Fountain Plaza. And so you can see a little bit closer how we're using the wall of the comfort station, and that water is coming over the side. Also some places to explore around the edges. I mentioned the extension of the Grove. So by creating this Grove View lawn, we're connecting the heart of the site with the Fountain Plaza over to Harvey Hill. And you can see how you can gather in this lawn space, have a picnic, and have this really wonderful view and connection with a beautiful landscape that currently exists in the site. Also overlooking Harvey Hill is the swing terrace, and you can see the city skyline in the back. And the comfort station. So we want people to come here and be able to stay for a while and having some comforts such as restrooms, and drawing from this idea of an oculus. So the roof of the comfort station is open, and the restroom stalls are all family restrooms and available for all genders. And you can see how the roof is open, and if you're up on the water play area, you can look down into the comfort station. So these are our different play areas. We have this area that's kind of purple is the NC Playground. It is shaped like a bowl, and using the sides of the bowl and the topography of that to have climbing. There's a few climbing structures. They connect to a bridge, a very nature-focused area. This water play area, you can see an idea here where someone can dam up the water and play with the water and manipulate it, and how that traverses down and empties into this sandbox. It's very important to us that the play is about all ages and abilities. So accessible, as I showed in the previous diagram. And as Nick was asking you in the beginning, what does play mean to you? So play isn't only for children, but we want it to be for all ages. This NC Playground area, you can see the two climbing structures, and they're connected. And then behind this tree would be connected to a bridge area, and lots of areas within this bowl type space to explore, bringing in ideas of nature play and the sand bowl, and it is connecting with the water play area. Lots of places to sit, lots of shade, lots of comfort for the children, but also the caretakers. Water play, you can imagine that even when the water is not on, that this is still a fun place to go and explore. Having playful objects and the picnic grove. So here you can see that you can bring your own food to grill, or you can set up and have a picnic. You can have areas for groups or smaller areas, lots of shade and seating. And connecting to Lake Wheeler Road. So you can see that here we're close to the street, but it's also a comfortable place to be for people, and bringing in a Piedmont Prairie native landscape. And you can see if you're entering in the site as a pedestrian, or if you're arriving by bus, you can see the grand staircase off to the side, the waterfall wall in the back. And the House of Many Porches will be rehabilitated. It will be true to its name and open up these porches that have been closed in over time. It will have take and go concessions, areas for staff, and some small meeting spaces. Honoring the history. So the Dix site has a very rich history. Looking at how to incorporate that into Plaza and Play through signage and physical markers. One thing that's been really wonderful about this project is we have been able to interview Mildred Simon. She grew up in the House of Many Porches, and she's one of the little girls pictured on the top right, and hear her stories of what it was like to grow up in the house. And you can also see in the very back, we're able to get an idea of what the original porch looked like. Also working with the Percent for Art program that the city has. So 1% of the project budget will be dedicated to public art. We've been meeting with the Public Art and Design Board, and we'll be conducting more public input on this to see how we can incorporate art into the site. And these are just some local and nationwide examples of how that may become worked into Plaza and Play. So with that, I will be happy to open it up for questions.
Grayson, thank you so much for this presentation and update on the Plaza and Play space. You know, it is very exciting and clearly ambitious. One of our first questions to come through is from Sarah. And, you know, I think it in fact reflects, you know, a concern about the ambition. You know, if we're unable, and this is again a question from Sarah, if we're unable to secure, you know, the $55 million required for this design, you know, is there a plan B in play, you know, to help us see through some elements of the project? So again, the question from Sarah is if you know, what is plan B if the $55 million required for this design is not possible?
So right now we are designing to that project budget. We do need to secure funding in order to begin construction. If we are unable to secure funding, that would require a redesign. So we're working hard on meeting that goal to secure the project funding.
Thank you, Grayson. We've got another question here. Let me see. Oh, and I also want to remind everybody, as you do come up with questions this evening, please feel free to just place them into the chat. If you're live with us here in the Zoom, you're also welcome to raise your hand, and we'll recognize you. You can ask your question out loud. But again, here we have another question. Let me see, from, I think it's also from Sarah. With much of the adjacent land sort of long owned by developers, what are we expecting in terms of results from the Dix Edge study? Are you able to speak to that, Grayson, in terms of, you know, where we are with the timing of the study, and if it's too late to expect, you know, any ability to kind of work with the developers on that, on the edges of Dix Park?
Yeah, I can speak to it a little bit. I think, of course, the planning department that is running the edge study, they are the experts in this project, but the edge study is looking at land uses for this area, and I mentioned the streetscapes. Some of the things that they are looking to do that can help with some of these issues that like affordability, be land acquisition for affordable housing, recommendation of an overlay district, changes to the development code that would make it easier to build affordable housing, changes to the future land use map. So what will what the city comprehensive plan recommend are the land uses of this area, and also working with property owners to make sure they understand home repair programs that the city has available. So I would also encourage everyone who's interested in the EDGE study to visit their website and follow up with the progress of the EDGE study.
Thank you, Grayson. So in brief, it's not too late to affect the land uses of what's happening around the edge of Dix Park, and for folks interested, now's the time to get involved.
That's correct.
I've got a question here from, I think, Shauna Fulton, and I've got two questions. Shauna, would you like to ask them out loud, or I can read them for you? I think I see you there in the Zoom.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Thank you for calling in. Thank you for being with us.
Yeah, I guess I have two questions. I guess they're kind of sets of questions. First is, how is the traffic on Lake Wheeler going to be affected by this? Like, is Lake Wheeler also going to be expanded? Because I can imagine there being a whole lot more traffic on that road. And right now it's that narrow 2-lane road. And I also, I guess, related question, there are going to be sidewalks put in. And then is it somehow going to be connected to what's going on at the farmer's market right now? Because it looks like the farmer's market is also putting in a new traffic pattern is what it looks like. And is all that happening at the same time, all by the end of 2022, which I guess isn't that far off.
So you are correct that Lake Wheeler Road is not, well, you didn't say these words, but is not up to city standards, meaning that it is currently 2 lanes and does not have curb and gutter. It is not currently funded to receive design and upgrades, but we hope that will happen soon and that it won't be too far behind Plaza and Play project. Along with that will be incorporation of sidewalks. And then also, if you recall from the Dix Park master plan, there is a multi-use path that will be created that will connect the very eastern edge of Dix Park down the edge of Lake Wheeler Road to connect to the farmers market. We recognize there is a lot happening in this area. And so we do hope to connect to the farmers market. We think it would be wonderful to be able to go to the farmers market, buy some food, bring it to Plaza and Play to either picnic or grill out. And we hope that the hope is that the multi-use path along Lake Wheeler Road will connect you. And as part of the EDGE study, they are looking at the streetscape for Lake Wheeler Road. So the streetscape is how wide will the road be? How many lanes will it have for car traffic to accommodate the increase of traffic in the area as a whole? What will the sidewalks be? What will the widths be for those? And I'll also mention they currently have a survey out that can be found from their project page that is asking what people's preferences are for what Lake Wheeler Road should look and feel like, and what that experience should be like.
Okay, and I guess just a follow-up question, if you don't mind, is that going to go all the way down Lake Wheeler, like going over the bridge to the other side of 440? Because it'd be great if the families there can just walk their kids, across
Yes.
that bridge to get to the area.
Well, since
And
Lake
I live
Wheeler,
further down that road, so
yeah, understandable.
Mhm.
Yeah, I've certainly heard the interest in making a great connectivity all the way down below I-40 and into those neighboring areas as Carolina Pines and that vicinity. With it not being funded at the moment, I don't know what those improvements would be, but there's certainly interest in and a desire for the pedestrian connectivity to go down Lake Wheeler Road and all the way up to where Lake Wheeler Road meets South Saunders Street.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shauna. Thank you, Grayson. We've got, let me see here, a question from, I think, Jeffrey Luber that's sort of kind of tied into the current conversation around Lake Wheeler Road. You know, Jeffrey would like to know about the safety for folks along, I guess, the Lake Wheeler stretch. His question specifically, you know, I know you want to keep the park open, of course, for everyone, but wouldn't it be safety conscious to have a fence along Lake Wheeler Road for the safety of park visitors and especially kids? So maybe, Grayson, if you could kind of speak to what you think or what you're anticipating that barrier to kind of look like to keep folks safe at the entry along Lake Wheeler.
Yeah, certainly. I'm going to share my screen again because I do want to highlight a little bit about the design. I think that's a really great question. So assuming you can see my screen, you see Lake Wheeler Road along the edge, and you see that pedestrian entry point kind of near Grissom Street and how that brings you into the site. This green that you see along the edge of Lake Wheeler Road is a lot of landscape with Piedmont prairie and bringing in different trees and working to preserve the existing tree line that is there. And so once you enter the site, there is a buffer between Lake Wheeler Road and the areas of activity. And with the children's play areas being further away from Lake Wheeler Road, so that there is a distance to where a child is not easily just starting from a play area to Lake Wheeler Road.
Thank you, Grayson. We've got a question here, and I think you touched on this during your update on the design, but we've got a question from, I think, Worcester about how hot it can get in the summer months, and you know how, of course, concrete could be very difficult to sit or play or stand on. So there's a specific question about shade and shade trees and other sort of shade elements in the plaza and play space, if you could speak to that.
Certainly, I'm happy to. And again, I will share my screen. So you can see that there's a lot of green that is hugging these areas that are the harder surfaces. We are just getting into what the materials will be, but working with the designers on making those areas very comfortable to be, recognizing how hot it is in the summers, incorporating water, which we hope will have a cooling effect. And you can see, for instance, here with the picnic grove, lots of umbrellas for shading, lots of trees coming up to the edges of those pathways. And then if I can quickly find an image of the Fountain Plaza area, I will point out that the south edge of that area does bring in some trees to break up that hard surface. And I'm not bringing it up super quickly, so I will stop sharing my screen. Oh, Nick, you're on mute.
I think as I was clicking the unmute, another box popped up on my computer. So there we go. And we're back. So thank you, Grayson, for all of that. I've got a question, I believe, from Joyce that she's asked in the chat. I think we're going to queue up Joyce Moses. Joyce, can you hear us? She's still mute on my screen. But I think she's almost live. She's so close, I can feel it.
Nick, while we're waiting for her, there is a question. Oh, there she is.
I have, sorry, thank you, sorry. I have to turn this off as well. So, yeah, so my question is, and you're probably gonna get some reverb here, so I have to get rid of this. So my question was with the, construction and the development around the historic Boylan Street entrance due to the creek widening, what will happen to the current Dorothea Dix Hospital signage and the crepe myrtle trees that have memorials assigned to them and the current garden plot that's there? And also, will that entrance be used for only pedestrian and bicycle entry?
Now I left myself on mute. All right, so those are great questions. We are currently, the Dix Park team is currently in the process of selecting a design team for the creek restoration project. So that's happening separately to the Plaza and Play project, and we'll be addressing those things. So from the master plan, it did call for the entrance that is at Boylan Avenue to remain a vehicular entrance. And the gardening aspect and the signage, we understand and feel that historic signage is all very important. We don't know exactly what the design of that area would be that would impact that entrance, but we will take great care during those times to preserve that signage and protect it and make plans for relocating the historic signage, and also work with gardening groups as we have the capacity to bring in volunteers. The park is certainly in need or can use more volunteer hours in certain areas. So, as construction does happen for the creek project, which we anticipate is many years out, we will work on plans for those, accommodating those things.
Grayson, thank you. And Joyce, thank you for your question. I think up next, we've got a question from Barbara. I think she's being queued up to ask her question live. Barbara, can you hear us? Well, why? Oh, yes. I think she's with us.
Okay. My name is Barbara Latta. I'm a runner and also a biker. Will bicycles be allowed in the playground, and do you have facilities to lock your bike? Usually there's like a series of places that we can leave our bicycles and participate on the playground. What about that?
That is a great question, Barbara. So where we are with the design is starting to look at that level of detail. We will certainly have bike racks available to lock your bikes up as you enter the Plaza Play site. We're also working on having a Citrix bike share station as part of Plaza Play. And we're not quite to the point yet of knowing where bicycles will or will not be able to go within the park. We want it to be safe for everybody. So I don't know that bicycles will be allowed to go all the way into the play spaces, but we will certainly want to bring in people while they are on their bicycles and provide amenities like bike racks for them to lock up their bikes and enjoy Plaza and Play. And I want to add one more thing. Our team is working on some early park improvements, and that includes adding some bike racks throughout the park so that people can lock up their bikes as they come up into the park throughout site-wide.
Thank you, Grayson. And I think, Barbara, thank you again for that question. I just want to add a side note. I am an avid bicyclist here in the city along with you, Barbara, and as a member of the community committee, I'm very much encouraging cycling infrastructure all throughout the park. And I'm glad that it's already been actively incorporated into the master plan and I think into all the conversations around transportation and infrastructure for the park in its future. So very excited to see that continued build out. I want to, I think, queue up real quick. We've got a question from Tina from Facebook Live. Are there any plans for building a new marbles museum to be built in Dix Park, maybe using Parks bonds funds. Is there a conversation around a new marbles museum at Dix Park? Grayson, can you speak to that?
I'll be glad to. Thank you for that question. One thing that was identified during the master plan process is the need to have park anchors in the park. We currently do not have access to many buildings in the park, and the ones that we do have access to are smaller buildings. But the Department of Health and Human Services is leasing the majority of the buildings, with their lease expiring in 2025. And as we get closer to that date, we are open to ideas for what park anchors, for instance, Marbles Children's Museum could be one of those. So that is an open idea. We currently do not have available park bond funds. There was a park bond being queued up for October of 2020, and that was decided to be delayed by City Council when the pandemic started. And recently there have been conversations about a future parks bond.
Thank you, Grayson. I just wanted to relay a couple comments from our friend Elizabeth, who's, I think, commenting from Facebook Live. Number one, she was very happy, I think, to hear about our restrooms being gender inclusive and family accessible. So, and her quote, she thinks it's fabulous, and as do I. She also wanted to make a comment on, I think, shade structures, which I think you spoke to earlier. And so I think her comment simply was that, she's noticed at newer parks in the area, the Sassafras and Pleasant and Apex, they have various places for shade. And so she's just very encouraging of the more shade, the better, which I'm sure, both the, adults and kids will enjoy alike. So.
That's great. Yes. And, there certainly is a transition or a period in the beginning where the trees are smaller, the ones that have just gone in and they're newer. So we are looking at some shade structures in some areas. And then over time, as those trees mature, they even provide even more shade and more comfort.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Grayson, I've got another question from Sarah about, it's sort of a question in relation to other parks that have been designed in the area, specifically, has the occupancy and the number of parking spaces at, say, Pullen Park, on a sunny, bright weekend, have they been studied? Since most recent master planners for Pullen Park are local, Sarah's asking, have they been consulted or lessons learned that we could potentially apply to Dix?
Yes, that is a wonderful question. Thank you, Sarah. And the answer is yes. So there's a few layers to that question there. One is, have we looked at the parking for Pullen Park on a sunny day? We know that, Pullen Park is so well loved and such a great amenity to the city. And sometimes there is not quite enough parking. We have been talking with the operators of Pullen Park over the last 6+ months as we've been designing Plaza Play, getting an idea for how often their parking is full and how many parking spaces they have. So we are looking at what we anticipate the capacity of Plaza Play to be. We recently, actually just this morning, had a conversation with our design team on this, looking at how much space is calculated on a per user. And so how much space are kind of, what is the capacity of Plaza Play? Now it's an open space, so it's a little bit different than a building having a capacity and how that is managed. We're also looking at utilizing other parking that exists in Dix Park, working with DHHS on shared parking options for, we hope that this place is well loved too, and that we may need to have some shared parking opportunities outside of the parking that's being built for Plaza Play. And then I'll also mention that not only have we been talking with the operators of Pullen Park, but also the operators of Moore Square, hearing lessons learned from several park sites on how they are running the park on day to day, how they are programming it, what the activation is, and lessons learned, and how to incorporate that as we progress in the design of Plaza Play.
Grayson, thank you. And, kind of as a follow-up to that question, one wonders if we're also thinking not just about the sort of immediate and near term of like parking and people driving in with families and, parking in and then around the park, but, thinking long term around like the future of transportation and mass transit and, people biking in with their cargo bikes and the kids riding in the back, I think there's a sort of question that comes to mind about a sustainable sort of transportation network and how the park has an opportunity to demonstrate that, like, not just the present day sort of dynamics of transportation, but the true future of it and a sustainable effort at building it out. Is that being discussed internally with the city, with the design team? Can you speak to that a bit?
Yeah, certainly. That's very important to us. And Nick, I think you hit it right there. Right now, Raleigh is very car dependent, but we hope that as Raleigh grows and just continues to become more of a city, that we will have a greater transit support to support the park, and also more connectivity with bike and pedestrian facilities towards downtown, towards the south, towards Carolina Pines, really in all directions out from the park. So we hope that continued focus towards bike, pedestrian, transit facilities do support the park over time, and that as the park grows and develops and we have that greater support for those things, that there is less of a need for parking in the park. We also talk quite frequently with the planning department. They are planning the bus rapid transit along Western Boulevard. So we are in close conversations with them on how that can support the park as well.
Awesome. Grayson, thank you. Thank you. I just got a question coming in from Facebook Live, our friend Brett. And it's a great question, asking about thoughts or plans as to how festivals might be incorporated into the park, either the Plaza and Play space or in the future.
Yeah, certainly. So as we're developing the design, I mentioned that we are working on the programming and activation for Plaza Play. We don't anticipate that large festivals can happen in Plaza Play, but perhaps some smaller festivals. And then also as we continue early park improvements, figuring out how we will continue to have festivals in the park. We're learning lessons as we move forward. As you know, we've hosted a few festivals in the park over the years. And then, of course, looking forward to being able to come out of a pandemic where we can have groups gather in the park safely.
Yes, thank you, Grayson. I think that we are almost close to wrapping up. We've got about 5-10 minutes left here with our friends. I do have a question here, sort of related back to transportation, but specifically a question around school buses showing up with the kids. Could you speak to how schools and buses coming in will be accommodated as they enter into the Plaza and Play space? Maybe you can pull up one of your slides to sort of demonstrate for us how that might unfold.
Yeah, Nick, I'm glad that you brought this this question up. So you can see along Lake Wheeler Road, this entry drive that comes into the park and brings you into this parking lot. And this area that says drop off is being designed to accommodate school buses or buses with groups of people. And so it will drop off those visitors in the parking lot. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. So you can see there's a little bulb out for that bus drop off and that entry into the park.
Thank you, Grayson. I want to acknowledge, we just got a comment from, I think, Facebook Live from Susie, who also wanted to just support the effort in thinking long-term around multimodal transportation networks and just ultimately what amounts to being a more sustainable way to travel for everybody involved, for our environment and for our people right here in Raleigh. Gosh, well, let me see if I've got any more questions. I think I do. Oh, and I think you touched on this earlier in the evening. It's a question about, families showing up, and in fact, I saw it this weekend, people showing up with picnic baskets and just coming through to have a good time in the sun and the green. But there's a specific question about, will there be grills? Will there be, tables and shelters for people to show up and sort of make use of? And I feel like I've seen that. I think, again, you touched on it. If you could speak to that, Grayson, before we wrap up here, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yes, I am very happy to. So I think this will be, this question is perfect for the intended use of the promenade area that's on either side, the picnic grove. So you can see in the bottom left, there is a gentleman grilling, lots of tables and chairs, lots of lots of umbrellas and trees and providing shade. Also throughout the Plaza Play site are areas for people to sit and gather. So a pop-up picnic, whether it's on one of the tables or in the Grove View lawn, is certainly welcome. And we're kind of excited about the ability to come into the park and grill.
Love it. Love it. I can't wait to come through myself and make use of some of those grills. Perhaps around the 4th of July would be a great time to do so. Let me see. I've got one more question here from Daniel about gardening. I feel like, are there some gardening opportunities within the plaza? And I feel like you've spoken to that before, and I've seen that come up. If you could share something about, the gardens and just how nature is being incorporated into Plaza and Play.
Yeah, so I mentioned when I showed the park entrance and that landscape area along the edge, kind of along Lake Wheeler Road, the idea is that will be a Piedmont prairie landscape that is a native landscape. So it provides a host, it attracts pollinators, birds, that sort of thing. And then also, around the House of Many Porches is very garden focused. We are still working on what that planting palette will be, but the Plaza and Play we see it as having a nice mix of green plantings and a variety of planting types throughout the site.
Love it, absolutely love it. I think one of the things I appreciate most about plants, nature, and gardens, it's a great way for people of all ages to engage and share space together. So I'm looking forward to seeing that unfold. There's a question here about what exactly is next in the planning process. I feel like there's another opportunity for more public input coming up down the way, not long from now. But if you could sort of speak to the future of the planning process, Grayson, I think it'd be a great way to wrap up this evening.
Certainly. So specific to Plaza and Play, we've had 2 public meetings. One was in October of last year, and then we had one in January of this year. We are anticipating the 3rd public meeting, which will be the final public meeting for the design process to happen this summer. So maybe around July. We're still looking at a final date for that. We also have our online engagement platform, which is publicinput.com/Plaza Play, where we encourage people to go on there and submit their comments. There is the site plan for the current schematic design is there. So it's another way for people to engage while we're in this in-between stage. I'll also mention that we have, hopefully we will be hiring a consultant team soon to start the Creek feasibility study, and that will also include some public engagement. A few other things I can mention is that I have 2 site walks coming up for Plaza and Play. So one is later this month. I believe it's March 27th, and then one in April. And those can be found on the dixpark.org website. And then I also encourage people to go and see what other activities we have out at the park, because we have a few other events and programming coming up in the park. And we're really looking forward to that now that the weather is getting warmer.
Love it, love it, love it. Grayson Maughan, thank you so much for all of your work day and night on behalf of the park, on behalf of the city, and on behalf of all of us here. I know that it in brief sounds like there's no shortage of ways to engage in the growth and development of this park, and frankly, in the growth and development of our city. So with all that, I think being said, we might just wrap up here a few minutes early so people can get back to their families, to their friends, their dogs, their cats, and everything in between, and maybe even enjoy what's left of the sunlight. So with all of that, I think I will say good night. Thank you so much for joining us here this evening with Grayson Maughan, with Janet Cowell, Trey, the whole cast and crew from the Dix Park Conservancy, and everybody else out there in the internet. It's been a pleasure to have you. I'll see you soon, hopefully, at Dix Park.
Thank you.